welcome to Brain Balance Live. I'm Jen. I'm a busy mom of three. I'm a brain balance mom. And this is Heather Wells. She is at the Hidden Churn and just at the helm of the Brain Balance Centers there in Texas. How are you doing today, Heather?
Doing well. It's starting to feel like summer out there after all the rain.
Yes, it is hot, and it's been raining for you too, huh? It's been raining for us in Florida as well.
I think it rained for about 2 weeks straight. And today, it's super sunny. There's clouds, but it's not going to rain. I don't know what to do with that, but it's cool. I like both. I like both.
I do too. We're going to make lemonade out of our lemons no matter what every day, right, Heather?
That's right. That's what we do.
Right. That is what we come here to talk about, actually, specifically to help our family life do a little bit better. And just for anyone who's joining us for the first time, who's never met Heather, Heather is a board-certified cognitive specialist. She's a therapist. She is a National Autism Summit speaker. There's also been some brilliant research that's just come out. Heather, do you want to tell everybody about the new research that we've just learned quickly?
Yes. If anyone doesn't know, Harvard did a 10-year study on our program and saw vast improvements in brain connectivity, lowered ADHD index scores, memory, emotional regulation, et cetera. And then last week, Cambridge Brain Sciences released research on the wonderful improvement we get in all kinds of executive function skills, reasoning and memory and attention and on and on. So we're very excited that these big wigs in the field are giving a nod to our program and seeing its efficacy.
Yes, we've known Brain Balance Centers works for a long time, but it is super nice to be recognized by these folks, isn't it?
It is. Now, it's exciting. And I love it for parents out there because we know it works. But when you have all of these research articles coming out that are peer reviewed, third parties have looked at it with nothing to gain from saying one way or the other what they think about it, it has to go through such a protocol before it gets published in scientific journals. And we were also in the Journal of Mental Health and Clinical Psychology for our improvements in worry and mood regulation and anxiety and those kinds of things. So what we claim to do, who knew? We actually do.
I love that. I love that. So what we're going to be talking about today for everybody is kind of what has happened during our pandemic and how you're feeling with your family right now. Heather's going to walk us kind of through some of those challenges. And Heather, what are we in a nutshell going to be talking about today?
Well, we're hearing from a lot of families, and rightfully so, they're saying this year has just kind of felt like a waste. Really, it started last March, and then this year has been weird. And are we going to be open? Are we going to be closed? What qualifies as a reason for our school to reclose? And we're hybrid, we're virtual, we're back in school, and we're closed again. And there's been quite a bit of research that shows that kids across the board have gone down about 9 months, have lost about 9 months worth of learning. And the disparities are larger for those who are already struggling. And so what do? We don't wait until next year. Just like January 1st of this year didn't magically, we didn't flip a switch and everything's back to normal. Everything's good. It's not going to be that way going into the 2021-22 school year either. School expectations are not going to be lowered because of the weird and crazy circumstances of this past year. And it's important to know that because the benchmarks, the expectations, the grading system is going to be as if it didn't happen. And I know that seems a bit unfair. And I get that. And at the same time, the kids have to make it up somehow. So it's just really a pickle for everyone. Yeah. But I don't have a say in what the schools are doing. But I can tell you that from everything I'm reading, which is a lot, school expectations next year will be what they would have been had this past year not happened. And we need to make the most of the rest of this school year. There's still about a month left, maybe more in some places. That is a huge percentage of a school year still.
Yes.
And so be talking to your teachers. Are my kids ready for next year?
I love that. You're kind of like starting off the conversation with something that we don't really like to do sometimes, right? To identify our struggles, right?
Yes. We talk a lot about logging things, being really not just my child struggling. How are they struggling? Where are they doing well? And it's not just academics. Think about the self-confidence. If you already have kids with shaky self-confidence in particular, but even kids who have traditionally been confident going into the next school year as if the past year in certain ways almost didn't happen.
Yeah.
How confident are they going to feel? Think about the social interactions. I mean, we all know that social interactions have been quite different. Some haven't had much at all. Others have done the best they can online with FaceTime or, Messenger, Facebook, whatever modes. That is just not quite the same as being in person.
No.
Some of our kids with social anxiety have relished this last year, because we talk about the worst thing you can do for anxiety in most cases is to rescue kids from anxiety provoking situations, because they remember anxiety at the height of the fear, and I couldn't handle that, so my parents had to rescue me. They don't realize that anxiety comes down. They've had a whole year of, in essence, due to nobody's fault, being rescued from anxiety. And so there may be larger mountains to climb on that. So really thinking about it, not just academically, but across the board. And the other thing, and I'm getting this question a lot, with kids who are coming in for assessments, they're asking me, are my kids' struggles because of COVID? And when we look at the health history and we look at the background, there have been developmental milestones that were missed all along. And these parents have been told, oh, don't worry about it, they'll catch up. They're just being a boy. Just everybody grows at their own rate. There's some truth to all of that, but those milestones are there for a reason. And really, they were struggling before, and this just really put a spotlight on it.
For sure.
So
and we lost, the end of last year, and, teachers and parents and students did the best that they could. And so it felt like we were already starting this year off at a deficit. And then to your point, it's like, no, the benchmarks are still the same. And so I love that you're going through this with us. All right. So where are we going to be looking for these struggles?
Well, the next thing I want to say that was very tied to that is, number one, don't assume it's quote unquote just because of the pandemic, because in all cases so far, the kids who've come in, of course, I understand that that's not completely a representative sample, because if people are coming to seek our help, they might have already been suspecting things, but they're still wondering that. Don't excuse it away to the pandemic and allow that to give you a blind eye to things that you might have suspected in the back of your head that you just explained away. It's easier to hope that nothing is wrong and that it's just the pandemic, which that's a big just. But on the other hand, the pandemic is an adverse childhood experience, ACE. And we know that traumatic experiences in childhood do change brain architecture. They impact brain development. So even if it is because of the pandemic, it still impacts brain development. Harvard has a lot of research about that. And the other thing to think about is, were your kids transitioning into one of those big milestone years when this happened? A lot of kids skate through school in the first couple of grades. I mean, pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, got this. And then, third or fourth grade, what just happened? Because you were learning all the building blocks, and then suddenly you're at this stage where you're not learning to read, you're reading to learn. You're not just learning the building blocks and the details, you're supposed to put it into the big picture. You move into middle school and high school, you need executive functions, being able to prioritize and manage your time and plan, and lots of independent skills start kicking in. So those issues, we were probably there prior, and they happen to be hitting a grade where new skills that maybe weren't as strong as some of their others were being called upon. So when you're logging things, right, what grade are they in? What were the new expectations this year? We all have strengths and struggles. So was it because even without COVID, this is a year where all of a sudden there starts to be a light on these challenges that they didn't really need to be independent in before? So once you log it, I mean, like I said, talk to teachers. Are my kids ready for next year's curriculum? I mean, be specific, ask questions, talk to your kids. We overlook this so much. Even, pretty much at all ages. I mean, you want to seek their input, not, are you nervous about next year? Because then you instill it in them and they might not have been. Ask them questions about the school year and which is your favorite class? Why? Which class is the hardest? Why? Even at younger levels, you can start getting some nuggets of information. And it's not just about, because a lot of times kids find a subject hard, but they manage to make the grade, but that takes out of other buckets. And they may be skating by so far, just barely making it. But learning is cumulative. So don't
Yes.
forget to talk to your kids. I mean, of all people who deserve a voice in what needs to happen, it's them, right?
We actually are having like a huge change this year because my 5-year-old was doing kindergarten online, and it was just massively hard for us. We had 2 other kids at home. I have an autoimmune disease, and so we were staying home during the pandemic and did not go back face to face. And we've decided, actually, our producer Bess lovingly calls this the gift. We've decided to have our kindergartner start kindergarten in the fall, even though we pulled him out and we said, you know what, this did not serve us, and so he's going back to kindergarten in the fall, and I am giving myself so much grace.
Good. Yes. I mean, back to we can't do it all,
Yeah.
and what's in your wheelhouse. So if it's in your wheelhouse to work on schooling with your kids, we all have to kind of, to some degree or another, of that sort of part of the parenting playbook. But we talked on another show about, if you don't enjoy teaching your kids, or if it's not in your wheelhouse, don't beat yourself up about that. We can't all be the best at every single thing.
Yeah.
And the good news too, to your point, is that with this research about the vast slide in academics during the pandemic, is that seeking expert support in the area that your kids needs is helping them spring back very quickly, much less than the amount of time they're behind. So don't try to do it all. Get your tribe together and who's going to do what, and seek outside help if you need it. Depression and anxiety have tripled during the pandemic. But here's an interesting thing, is that mental health has been impacted more, according to most research I've read, in adults than it has in kids. And that makes sense on a lot of levels, because, maybe salaries were slashed, jobs were cut, and you're trying to work from home. You're trying to also be the parent to the teacher to your kids while still being the parent. So we also want to make sure we're taking care of ourselves, and we're not projecting things onto them unintentionally that aren't there. It could be our stuff, and it's important to engage in self-help. And also, if we don't deal with our stuff effectively, we talked about how that spiral, we are their safe harbor. They learn emotional regulation by seeing us emotionally regulate. And if you've had difficulty with that, I mean, you're not alone. Parental burnout is probably at an all-time high. More than self-maintenance, more than sleeping and eating right and exercising, it means engaging in activities that are meaningful to you. And how can you work on schooling in a way that is not drudgery for you or your kids? Right now in Texas, schools are doing all the pre-test, the benchmarks for the state exam, the STAR test. It's a stressful time, and the marks come back low. Kids not only kind of get beat up from seeing low scores on those tests, but also because it's just like drill, 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 drill. Why is this relevant? If I'm bored with this, your brain perceives boredom exactly as it does anxiety. And then the emotional brain starts controlling behavior, and the checking out and the inattention and emotional lability and so forth. So incorporate math into cooking, into, get chores going, get hobbies going, where you can incorporate the same lessons, but in a way where they see why it matters. And suddenly those brains become sponges. It makes a huge difference.
Yes. I love that. And, I see on your list of things that we're like kind of checking off to see, if we're maintaining through this pandemic. One of the things was quality time, with our kids. I love that.
Because what happens so often, especially in the past year, you might have been in this same building home with your child more than you ever have been, the most number of hours. That is not the same as quality time. So have you had so much pressure on yourself to work on the schoolwork with your kids and kind of be the drill sergeant that you haven't had that playful, connected quality time? Because in the households where kids have not really shown increases in depression and anxiety, they pretty much across the board attribute it to quality time. That's something we want all the time, but we can get confused with quantity and quality. The quality of the time matters much more than the quantity. And getting out and exercising. I know you kind of get into this, we're stuck indoors, we can't go socialize mindset. Are your kids exercising? How are they sleeping? Look at other things besides just thinking, are they depressed? Are they anxious? Is there anything that is markedly different? in their emotions, in their behaviors, in their eating patterns, their sleeping patterns, because those can be big cues for you. That's really important. I mean, we got to take care of the basics first, right?
Yes.
Which is difficult because if they're struggling, we know that neurodiverse individuals in general do have more sleep difficulties and they may have food sensitivities. But some of the basics get lost along the way when we've added more hats and more roles to our list. And so how refreshing to know that quality time, you are helping your child's brain grow. You are helping them socially, emotionally. You are getting their brains into rest and digest if they're overwhelmed, where they can absorb the information when you do spend the time on that. How fun that you can work on building a model airplane and make that math, make it science, make it write a journal about it where you're getting some language arts in there, and then they care about it and it becomes more relevant, and then their brains literally can learn the information more, not flashcards and drilling.
Yeah, I have actually loved very much. We've talked about the love of Legos. And I feel like this pandemic, I used to get Legos out of the house because you step on them and it's horrible.
Yes. Ow.
But now doing Legos with my kids, I've actually started to quite enjoy doing something like that, which is something it's kind of a plus that I didn't enjoy before. So.
Yeah. And, speaking of Legos, if you have kids who have difficulty with spatial concepts, maybe they have poor equilibrium, body awareness, you notice that they did better in algebra than geometry. Or when you give them directions that involve multiple locations in the house, they have more difficulty following directions when they're just all right here. Do they really understand below, above, in between, to the left, to the right? You can be talking out loud while you're building and you are growing spatial concepts. I mean, pretty much everything you do with your kids can be completely fun and also learning, and then it's just win-win.
Yes, I love that so much. All right, we talked a little bit about self-care. Did you want to say anything else about that?
No, I mean, we did an entire self-care show. So because of that, I just wanted to touch on it as a reminder.
Just remind ourselves to put on that oxygen mask.
Yes. A couple of weeks ago, if anyone didn't see that, just go under the videos tab and you can find the self-care show. So I won't regurgitate all of that, but I just don't think I can remind people enough of that.
Yes, no, it's true. I need to be reminded every day.
But really, it's just about logging what's going on, talking to the right people, talk to your spouse. If grandparents are extremely involved in the child's life, don't forget to talk to the child, the teachers. Where are the breakdowns? Start working on them right now. Do not think of this year as over, because it's not. This is a huge percentage of a child's life. This is an enormous percentage of a school year still left. And we know even without COVID, there is a summer slide in learning that, depending on the subject, can be 2 to 4 months in the best of scenarios. And so when you can find ways to incorporate learning into, not right now as well as in the summer, into your daily life, you're getting more things done at the same time. And your kids, most importantly, will be engaged and know why it matters. And then their brains are better able to learn.
I have to bring us to something, and it is kind of like near the end of our checklist. So obviously we'll go back if there's anything we've forgotten, but something that you wanted to bring up today, and I cannot stress enough how much this has helped my family, is finding things to praise about your kids. Will you talk about that with us a little bit?
Yes. One of the things is, I know there's been some concern over my kids have gotten even more addicted to screen time during the pandemic, and is that going to ruin them? And there's also been more worries because, and this is a good thing that's come out of the pandemic, is some parents have become aware of struggles their kids were having that they wouldn't have known about had they not been sitting there working with them on their schoolwork. But taking out look for anything like, even if it was the screen time. Yes, we've talked about why too much of anything is too much. I mean, not all screen time is evil, and what they're doing on the screens matters tremendously. But have you considered that maybe they were showing resourcefulness in something they did online? Yeah, there's a positive side to most things. So all of the things to be worried about, yes, we need to get kids ready for next year, but we want to give objective observation. Wow, you used a new strategy. Tell me how you came up with that one. We don't want to tell them, oh, you're so smart. Oh, you're so, things that are considered fixed. Even telling them, this sounds so counterintuitive, but stick with me for a second. When kids are struggling to believe that they can grow and like, this is so difficult for me, so why even try? And they start opting out. When we praise them for the grade, for being the MVP, for how pretty they are, for how smart they are, to a certain degree, some of those traits are things that they can't change. But you can praise them for how they persevered. You showed such grit. Even when this got hard, you kept going. Praise them for, show interest in what made you decide to write about this topic. You are being actively engaged. You're interested in it. Their creativity on a project they turned in. I never would have thought to do that. How did you come up with that idea? So things that kids must know, that just because they're struggling right now, it just means they're not quite there yet. You've heard me talk about the power of yet. So, okay, if there have been bad habits formed, maybe it was adaptive. Maybe it served them in some way. And if you can find that in there, even if it's something you want to change, there's probably still something within that to praise. Kids, we cannot, I made a joke on one show about, you sneeze the coolest. Like, we can't praise. If we praise too much about every single thing, then it no longer seems genuine. And they actually can lose their faith in what you say because they know that wasn't really worthy of praise. So it must be authentic, and it can't be over the top. It needs to be in keeping with what was actually accomplished. Wow, you were so helpful to your sister. That was very thoughtful of you. You had homework to do, and you heard her crying, and you still went over there to comfort her. You have such a loving heart. I mean, that's genuine. It's specific. That's the other thing, is being specific. So you're attaching the thoughtfulness and kindness to the action, so they're still the specific thing, but you're still showing that it's because of who they are, not because of what they did. Kids often have difficulty separating what they do from who they are. I made a bad choice. I'm a bad person. I failed this math test. I'm stupid. So we don't want to praise the thing they did without attaching it to the character trait it embodied, right?
Yeah. I love that. Whenever my son is kind to his siblings, well, first of all, it gives me genuine joy. Yes. And it was a long time that it didn't happen very often. And so whenever it does, if I can take a moment and be like, you are leading by example, and I just love that. And he feels like,
yes. And kids live up to the words we give them, right? And so if toxic words are telling them that they're stubborn, defiant, lazy, task avoidant, they will start living up to that. Those behaviors are communication that I am struggling with something. There's an expectation being placed upon me, whether it's at school or elsewhere, and I don't have the toolkit to handle it. That is where that communication or that behavior comes from. And so we do not ever want to assign negative character traits or personality labels to kids who are struggling, or any kids. We want to look for the good and reinforce that, because that which gets attention also gets repeated, right?
Yeah. That's energy. Where energy flows, energy goes, right?
Yeah. So there's been a whole lot. I mean, family members might have gotten on each other's nerves. I mean, around each other all the time, and you're stressed out, and you've got a deadline with your work, and then, oh my goodness, I just got this note from the teacher, and that's not going so great. So it's understandable, but just know that what kids always need, number one, is that connection, that relationship with their parents. And when you have that at the forefront, the other stuff more easily falls in line, and they're less likely to be resistant to your support. We want to support them on the level they need, but create independent problem solvers. But it is paramount for the vast majority of kids around the country and the world, I imagine, for them to get extra layers of support this summer to prepare them for the fall, because next year it's just going to be, they're going into fifth grade. Fifth grade is going to look like it would have a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I don't like announcing that, but it's the truth. It's what the plan is in the schools. So, but you're not alone. So really, it's more about log it, ask the right questions, ask yourself questions, look at their behaviors, not just, are they lashing out, melting down? Are they sleeping the same? Are they eating the same? Those are all communication to you. If you see those, talk to them. And when you talk to kids, it's much better to not say, we need to talk. That's intimidating and they might draw into their shell that feels scary, no matter, even though you're not being scary. But when you have these open-ended conversations each day, it becomes the norm and it feels comfortable. So when there is something serious you need to talk about, it doesn't feel out of left field that you're asking them questions. So dinner around the family conversation around the dinner table. They also need one-on-one time with each parent, not just as an entire family. You get different types of engagement by doing that. Take interest in their interests. When you are genuinely interested in the things that they find interesting, they know that you care, and we're not trying to mold them into something we want them to be. We're helping them be the best version of themselves.
Yes. I love that so much. I feel like so many of these tips are things like we just need to log all these different areas for improvement and give ourselves a forgiveness for the things that maybe we could do better with. And then try to add some quality time, add some exercising, add some things that even we ourselves, if we're dealing with anxiety or depression through all of this, we might be struggling with naturally as well.
Yes. Journaling is fantastic. And I mean, when they're not being graded, some kids have writing anxiety, but when they journal, we know how much it helps mental health. We know how much that helps you pinpoint, oh, that's what's bothering me right now. What a great activity to get going right now and then carrying it all the way through the summer and beyond. But if your kids need extra help academically, get it, because the expectations just keep going up. And the longer you wait, the more ground there is to make up. And so that just leads to a churn. So the sooner, I mean, whether we want there to be a struggle or not, if there is one, we just need to acknowledge it and get them the support they need as soon as possible.
I love that. Well, Heather, I feel like we've touched on all of the things that you wanted to talk about today. Do you feel good about that?
I do, yes.
All right. As you can see here, we've got all of our centers that you can contact. Find one that's closest to you. The Woodlands is our new center. So if you're finally got one near you, congratulations. And as you can see, you can follow Heather at The Hidden Churn and contact her, of course, on Facebook as well. Please, 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 if you're watching this on the replay, put questions down. Heather is a wealth of knowledge, and really it's her mission to help us families just do a little bit better for ourselves and honestly grow together. So thank you, Heather, as always. Do you have another show this week?
Yes, Thursday at 3:30, Dr. Brian and I will finish up our month-long series about autism.
Okay. All right. So make sure that you check Heather out on Thursday. Thank you, Sherry, for being with us today.
Hi, Sherry.
And we will see you all next week with a new topic. Same time, same place. Thanks so much, Heather.